Since Black Sabbath, the sound of evil has become a defining element of heavy metal. But what makes metal sound evil?
The blues scale has the flat fifth, the tritone. That's the devil's note. Like in the old days, you weren't allowed to use that note. But Black Sabbath, their title song, you know, Black Sabbath is totally working the diminished fifth, the tritone.
You know, in the Middle Ages, the tritone was identified as the music of the devil because it apparently was the sound one used to call up the beast. There's something very sexual about the sound of the tritone. I think that in the Middle Ages, people who were ignorant and scared, when they heard something like that and felt that reaction inside their body, went, oh, here comes the devil.
There's an ongoing battle in heavy metal to be more evil than the band that came before you. This has kept me into metal all these years. But there's more to this music than just sounding evil.
If you don't have an electric guitar with really good amps and really good distortion, you don't have the core of metal. You also need to have a really strong bass sound in it. Bass with the bass guitarist and bass with the bass drums.
And then usually a vocalist who soared over top of all of that stuff with usually a fairly high voice.
They can't be soft, cute, sly. They have to be leather-lunged in one way or another. White man came across the sea, he brought us pain and misery. He killed our tribes, he killed our creed, he took our game for his own need. We got him high, we got him well, out of the place to sing it. White man came to watch the free, oh will we ever be set free? Riding through dust clouds and barren wastes, walking hard on the plains.
Back when I was a kid practicing air guitar leaps off my front porch, my band of choice was Iron Maiden. I memorized every note, every riff, and every solo. Maiden was part of the new wave of British heavy metal, a movement that built on the foundation laid by early metal bands. They honed a sound that was faster, heavier, and more melodic than their predecessors. Well, now I'm on my way to interview Maiden's legendary singer, Bruce Dickinson. And if the 12-year-old Sam knew about this, he'd be freaking out. But I gotta keep it together, even though I'm interviewing him on the stage of London's famous venue, the Hammersmith Odeon.
I better start talking then.
My intention as a front man is to try and find the guy who's right at the back of the 30,000 festival and sort of go, yeah, you. Yeah, you. You. And the guy goes, hey, like that. And you can do that. You can actually do that.
With heavy metal, it doesn't even matter. The microphone's there, but you still got to sound like you're projecting to the back of the hall. Like there's a tremendous effort involved. And so you get the return in, I think, particularly people like Bruce Dickinson of Iron Maiden or Rob Halford of Judas Priest, of this very operatic style of vocal production that was developed in the 19th century before amplification in order to reach the back of the hall.
You're warming up the whole crowd. And on a good night when it all works, it shrinks whatever arena you're in, and it should, by the end of the, you know, me in particular, because I'm the guy usually yelling at everybody and running around, it should feel like you've shrunk the place to the size of your thumb, where you can go, yeah, all together.
Good night! Dickinson's operatic vocal style has had an enormous impact on heavy metal music. And although people don't associate metal with virtuosic styles of music like classical or opera, it's these influences that make metal unique.
The classical roots of heavy metal are fairly obvious. And I would say most of the practitioners, most of the really, really good ones, were fans of dark classical music. And in some cases, dark and powerful and heavy classical music, like Wagner. He actually reshaped the orchestra He added tubas, he added extra basses, he added an octabass, which is actually a double-sized bass violin that took two people to play. One guy on a stool fingering it, and one guy, one guy playing the bow. And he just loaded down the bottom end of his orchestra so that when that orchestra played, the rafters shook. There was so much bass. It was the first time that anybody really heard that live.
I still believe if Richard Wagner had actually been around today, he'd probably be in Deep Purple. Or Beethoven probably would have been happy to be in Led Zeppelin. And the music itself, because it was so huge and it didn't have amplification in those days, it had orchestration, I think again belongs to that metal environment.
Classical music is associated with the university, with, learning and everything. Bach didn't go to college, Mozart didn't go to college. Virtuosic performers who were known as improvisers, that describes Bach as well as it describes Eddie Van Halen. From Eddie Van Halen on, the guitar becomes so overdriven, so hot, that the models of playing from violin and organ become relevant to the guitar, which used to be an instrument like the piano where you'd hit a note and it would fade. Not any longer. You hit a note, it can last forever because it's feeding back. And so all of a sudden you have the classical models being relevant because of technological changes.
Of course, heavy metal has another musical ancestor, one whose roots lie deep in the American South.
The root of all rock and roll is in blues and slave music. I mean, they invented it. The guitar is an African instrument, That's where it started.
The origins of metal really can trace itself back to the blues in America, and that, of course, was very much an oppressed music, and it very much spoke to people that needed something a little different. It's about the factory worker coming out of the factory, wanting the energy to come out in a different way, in an entertainment form that was theirs and theirs alone.
How were you influenced by the blues?
Oh, a lot. I liked blues because that's where we started. We actually, before we called ourselves Black Sabbath, we were a blues jazz band.
Our first influence was really American blues that had been processed through the sensibilities of the English rock musician. They took American blues and threw it back at us.
Look at the history of Black Sabbath and even of Deep Purple and certainly of Led Zeppelin. These people didn't come from affluent backgrounds, and therefore they grew up and knew exactly how to present their music to people who came from a like-minded situation.
Describe Aston to me.
A shithole, basically. Very rough, very not a good area. But the people, some of the people were nice. It just got run down, And I hated it living there. I hated it at the first, because my parents moved there, and of course I was with them. And I think that influenced our music as far as where we come from and the area we were from, made it sort of more mean.
The place where we're from, there's a lot of big factories over there, like the heavy metal factories, and they're all there, So like aluminum